From the Foundation Studio right here on Biloxi's Back Bay, I want to welcome you to SuperTalk Outdoors, where we celebrate every single Monday at lunchtime the world-class outdoors of the state of Mississippi, because as I say every week, we are the capital of the outdoors in America. I want to thank you for joining us on the powerful SuperTalk Mississippi Radio Network, or on SuperTalk TV at C Spire TV, or you might be watching the show on YouTube or Facebook, or listening on your favorite podcast. With that said, I always give you the date. It's March the 27th, 2023. It's amazing how fast time has flown by. Hey, you know this from if you're a regular listener, I spend a lot of time in the Mississippi Delta. I just love the Mississippi Delta. And I am praying for the people impacted by that terrible tornado. Just keep in mind the Red Cross, the Salvation Army, a long list of nonprofits are on the ground now, and the various communities that were impacted. You can also go to SuperTalk.fm to find ways to help. That team at SuperTalk News is doing a great job. So keep them in your thoughts and prayers, and do whatever you can to help them. They're going to need help. You know, as a Katrina survivor, someone who worked very closely with Governor Haley Barbour as a vice chairman of the recovery effort here in coastal Mississippi, and I had the honor of writing the foreword to Haley Barbour's book, America's Great Storm. In a way, this is the Delta's Katrina. I mean, it's just, obviously the scale is smaller, but the destruction is very similar. And we know, us, the folks of coastal Mississippi know what those people are going to have to go through. They're going to need our help. So keep that in mind and keep them in your thoughts as well. Hey, I especially want to thank our title sponsor, the Foundation for Wildlife, Mississippi Wildlife Fisheries and Parks. They're doing such a great job. They're working so hard on the behalf of Mississippi conservationists. You know, they give a tremendous amount of money to the Department of Wildlife Fisheries to Parks to help with wildlife and education projects. They get involved in issues like this Outdoor Stewardship Trust Fund. But they're a group of wonderful, dedicated leaders that are working on behalf of the conservation efforts for this state. By the way, I've said this many times before, but when I express my views, they're mine, not the Foundation's. You know, it's been said many times, but I think it's important to note that I'm a former newspaper publisher. I understand the importance of speaking truth to power and doing it respectfully. What I've learned over the years, though, is that policy and legislation surrounding wildlife conservation can get really sticky at times. Also note that there's a need to shine the light on the wildlife conservation process, and I'm honored to be here and understand that SuperTalk Outdoors has become one of those lights. And I appreciate the fact that you pay close attention to that, and you know, it's a big deal. It's a big deal that we're part of that process. Incidentally, speaking of the Outdoor Stewardship Trust Fund, I've been watching it very closely. As you heard on the show a couple of weeks ago, Lieutenant Governor Delbert Hosemann said he had committed $20 million this year, or at least committed to that number. I also had conversations with House Speaker Philip Gunn over the last week, and he's also focused on the fund. If you look at where we had $10 million this year, but $50 million worth of applications have come through to the Board of Trustees, which is incidentally, I think today actually, finishes the process for getting the confirmations done for all the Board of Trustees members. But they had $10 million to work with, and so we really need more money. The original goal was to get it to $20 million. I'm hoping that, they've got a lot on their plates in the legislature working on the budget this year, but I'm hoping we can get to that $20 million, because the amount of matching funds that's available to us can take that $20 million and turn it into 40, 50, maybe even more when you think about the federal funds that are engaged. So this is one of the reasons, the fact that we are at this late date in the legislative session and we still don't know what that number is a reason why we have to work harder to get a dedicated funding source, so we can just stay focused after that on applications and spending the money on projects that can really be very beneficial to the outdoors heritage of Mississippi. I looked over the weekend at the original goals for the show, and I just wanted to share a couple of things with you. Said we wanted to be a how-to show, campfire stories, interesting outdoors people and industry leaders, and some, but not too much, of why what happens in Jackson and Washington, D.C. impacts our outdoorsmen. And I'll add to that there's been a little more of that lately just because of the white-tailed deer issue, but that's usually not going to be the case. And then I went on to say that our goals are we will work to lead the conversation in this state about Mississippi's outdoors. And I think, my assessment and the assessment of my team, when you look at the feedback we've gotten, you look at the numbers, the strong numbers that we've got across multiple media platforms. I think it's clear you guys appreciate the job that we're doing. And I want to thank you for listening, for watching, and for paying attention. It means a lot to us. And lastly, I want to say this. I'm extremely proud of the opportunity I had to shed light on the amazing people of the Mississippi Department of Wildlife, Fisheries, and Parks. I've got two of them today. In the first segment, we're going to have Adam Butler with the Wild Turkey Program Coordinator. And then in the second half of the show, we're going to have Anthony Ballard, who's the nuisance species biologist, and we're going to talk about bears. So without any further ado, let me turn to my dear friend, someone I really enjoy when he's on the show. He was just on the show a couple of weeks ago. Adam Butler, the Wild Turkey Program Coordinator for the Department of Wildlife, Fisheries, and Parks. How you doing, Adam?
It's great to be here. Appreciate the opportunity to talk turkey, as always.
Yeah, no doubt. Hey, listen, we had a great conversation a couple of weeks ago, and what we wanted to do today is kind of circle back and talk a little bit more about the turkey, man. This amazing species that, thank goodness, that the Mississippi adopted the North American Wildlife Conservation Model back when it did, because the wild turkey was not something you would see in most areas of the state, was it?
Oh, no, absolutely. I mean, you talk to anybody that's, over the age of 50 or 60, they can probably remember seeing the first turkey they saw. We nearly lost wild turkeys in the early part of the 20th century, and the restoration of the wild turkey. I think I said it on the last episode I was on, but when the Department of Wildlife, Fisheries, and Parks was formed, originally the Wildlife Conservation, or the Game and Fish Commission, the legislature, one of their first items they tasked the agency with, one of the reasons we were formed was to restore wild turkey populations, because they had been so hammered during the last couple of decades of the 18th or the 19th century and the first couple of decades of the 20th century. So that resurgence took place here, and it's taken place all across the country. And so wild turkeys are commonly held up as, one of the greatest success stories of wildlife conservation in North America.
Isn't it amazing, though? You look at Mississippi. I mean, is there an area of the state that doesn't have the presence of a wild turkey these days?
Well, the only area that you could say that about would be the interior delta, and there's a reason for that. Not a whole lot of trees there, and they're a bird of the forest, so they got to have forested habitats. But now, I mean, you look at the margins of the delta, like along the Mississippi River, really strong populations there. Right now, a lot of those clubs behind the levees probably have as many turkeys today as they've had in quite a while. We've had several great hatches over there. But, we really have turkeys everywhere. Now, they haven't done as well the last couple of years, or the last, say, 10 or 15 years. There's been a lot of worry and anxiety about turkeys, and we could talk about some of that. But the last few years, we've seen a lot of reason for optimism. The data that we keep on turkey hatches has looked really good the last couple of summers. This year, people, talking about seeing a lot more turkeys in the woods. Our game check number, so for turkeys, we do have mandatory harvest reporting. Hunters are supposed to be reporting their bird by 10 p.m. on the day it's taken. So we've got real-time numbers. Our current, right now today, harvest number for wild turkeys is running about 20% above what it has the last couple of years. So that's good, positive there. And that's despite the fact that we've had, maybe the strangest 2 weeks of weather you could possibly imagine in the springtime. Going from a week ago today, the high was like mid 40s, and and now we're 80s the last couple of days with all kinds of storms and things. So crazy weather that affects the turkeys, but we're still running a little bit ahead on our harvest.
But when you say you're right that it's great to see that there's so many people in the woods, and that the harvest numbers are up 20% compared to last year, and we had a good year last year. But the reality is that also creates challenges, doesn't it, Adam? And just in terms of managing the resource.
Right. Yeah. So turkey hunting is one of the few forms of hunting where there's been a real big increase in participation over the last decade or so. You hear a lot of consternation about hunter numbers declining and hunter license dollars following that. And those are the things that fund conservation. So there's a lot of worry about having more hunters. Well, turkey hunting is one of the few forms of hunting where that's not really been the case, both here at home in Mississippi and nationally. Turkey hunter numbers have gone up dramatically. Just in the last decade, our hunter numbers have nearly doubled. And that's on a resource that's not necessarily doubling itself. So that does cause a lot of management issues. We've heard a lot of concerns about what do we do about the turkey season and things like that. And so we can talk about that.
Hey, let's do this, Adam. When we come back on the other side, we'll talk about how that pressure on the resources caused at least some thinking about how we might be able to manage that better. And then also, once we do that, we'll talk about the wild turkey itself. This incredible animal, this thing that's addictive for people. We'll come back to that after this with Adam Butler, the Wild Turkey Program Coordinator for the Department of Wildlife Fisheries. Welcome back to SuperTalk Outdoors. I have my friend Adam Butler, who's the Wild Turkey Program Coordinator. He's a great friend of the show, someone I really enjoy spending time with. So the hunting numbers are up, the harvest numbers are up, and this is sort of within a framework where you guys were already a little bit thinking about the amount of pressure on what is not an unlimited resource. So what's the thinking these days at the Department of Wildlife Fisheries and Parks about how to best manage that?
Yeah, that's a good question. There's a lot of concern, like I said, all across the country about turkey populations because, not just here, but a number of states have seen some indices and things over the last, 10 or 15 years that have been concerning. And, we've heard from a lot of hunters. We've gotten a lot of comments from hunters about turkey season and how what we should do. Everybody seems to have an opinion on how the season should be changed or structured or whatever. And so the last 3 or 4 or 5 years, we've taken a really deep dive looking at our spring season framework, really our spring and fall season frameworks, and we've went through a process of evaluating what may be the best fit for turkey hunting in Mississippi. Some of that's culminated in some research projects with Mississippi State University. They've always been a great partner to our agency on science and doing a lot of the heavy lifting on some of the really complex analysis and stuff or questions that we have. And we kind of came to a point where we are planning to make some recommendations to the Commission on Wildlife, Fisheries, and Parks about turkey seasons going forward. So nothing that would affect this current season we're in, but looking forward to 2024 and beyond, we're going to bring some recommendations to the April Commission meeting, which we hope will be well received by the public to address turkey hunting in Mississippi.
Well, shorten the season, Adam. What's the thought there?
Well, so we've looked at a lot of things, and shortening the season or dropping the bag limit. Those are all things that we hear a lot from the public about. What we've looked at is that the season itself is not, at least the spring season is not a big control on the number of turkeys going forward. Turkey numbers ebb and flow, due to a whole lot of natural factors. And so the hunting season itself is not one of the major things controlling that, but the hunting season does impact hunter satisfaction and some of the things that go into that. Our season, as early as it opens, we really open before a lot of the real peak activity when it comes to gobbling and stuff like that. I mean, the best days of our season are going to be probably the next 2 weeks, and so what we're looking at is potentially going back to in the spring, going back to the old framework that existed prior to 2005. So prior to 2005, turkey season in Mississippi opened on a Saturday closest to March the 20th, and it ran to May the 1st. And then in 2005, the agency switched to where the turkey season opened on March 15th, regardless of the day of the week it fell on. Well, some years like this year, that fell on a Wednesday. The last 2 years, it's been a Monday and a Tuesday, respectively. And so, that's something to think about. So going back to kind of that older framework closer to March the 20th moves us back a little bit in time, but in mid-March with the turkey, wanting to talk about the bird itself, mid-March is a time of flux for the turkey population. A week's time in mid-March makes a huge difference in the amount of gobbling they're doing, the amount of all the stuff that hunters love, can change pretty quickly during that time period as they're kind of coming out of their winter mode and moving into the kind of the spring breeding mode. So this change would put us back closer to when gobbling activity is ramped up. And we think that that would provide a better season framework. We can show that that's going to increase harvest rates for hunters. That's going to increase satisfaction for hunters. And so that's a change we're looking to do moving forward. So basically just reverting back to what it had been for a long time, almost a 24, 25 year period back from 1980 to 2004. The other really big thing we're looking at going forward is the endorsement of a tagging system. And that would really be to try to address some of the illegal abuse of this resource. So we're of the opinion that we definitely need to do everything we can to make sure that illegal exploitation of the resource is being addressed to the greatest extent possible. So we've had harvest reporting. This is the 5th season we've had harvest reporting now, but tagging the bird at the point of harvest, which is a lot of states do. If hunters travel out of state, they're going to be really familiar with that process where they have to have a tag before they can go hunting. And then when they take an animal, put the tag on the bird until it's, cleaned and on the table and everything. So we're looking at moving to that to provide our law enforcement with a tool to address some of the illegal exploitation of the resource that we know is out there.
Well, look, as we get closer to those recommendations and them being taken up by the commission, we'll talk more about the specific recommendations that's going to be made. But thanks for sort of a heads up that you guys are looking at it for the good of the resource, I might add. Hey, listen, that is an elusive bird, isn't it?
Oh yeah, no doubt, and that's why it's so addictive for so many people, I think.
So tell me more about how that bird does what it does.
Well, the turkey season that, it really coincides with the breeding season of the bird. And what normally happens in nature is that the gobbler, the male turkey, is trying to call up girlfriends. And what the hunter's trying to do is imitate the female, trying to sound like a hen turkey most of the time. Now, sometimes there's some differences there, but you're trying to convince that gobbler to do something that he's not normally going to do. He's normally going to sit there and gobble and show off and strut and wait for the ladies to come to him. And you're trying to reverse that. And that makes it really difficult, especially your older, bigger toms. They're really proud of themselves, and they want to just sit in one place and do their thing. And so that can cause a lot of consternation for hunters that just sit there. He's gobbling over there, and there's nothing I can do about it.
Their eyesight and they're so perceptive. You got to be on your game to get a turkey, don't you?
Yeah. A lot of people say if they could smell like a deer, you'd never get one, if they had that sense of smell. But they have extremely good eyesight. They're particularly really good at being able to detect movement. And they also have really good hearing. And because they're a prey species, like everything in the woods tries to eat turkeys. It's not just us. And because of that, they're super nervous, essentially from the time they hatch or even before, they're being pursued by all kinds of different predators. And that makes them very, very nervous about, their day-to-day living. And so they pick up on anything in their surroundings that are out of the ordinary because they're just so paranoid that they're going to get eaten. And that makes it tough, for a hunter. You got to be totally still, totally camouflaged, blend in, and you got to go through all these great lengths to try to match your surroundings and not stick out, in addition to being a good caller and sounding like a turkey and being able to kind of speak that language.
Yeah, think about our friends from Mossy Oaks and what they've been able to bring to the table as far as the camo. And then I think about, gosh, Preston Pittman and, Will Primo.
He sounds exactly like a turkey. That guy is a turkey. He's like that.
and Will and all these guys, they, this is when it really matters. It really matters how you operate that call and how you dress and how prepared you are to do what you need to do. But as we said so many times before, it's so darn addictive and people love it. And I was thinking about all these other predators that get around it. One of the farms that we hunted the last several years, we've had a few turkey, not many, but a lot of predators, a lot of bobcats and coyotes and whatever. But you never find, never find a wad of turkey feathers somewhere. So they must.
Well, you don't find them, but they get eaten a lot. I mean, in a normal turkey population, you're going to lose, 40% or so of the females every year, and the gobbler.
Wow, that's a lot.
Yeah. So, it's not uncommon at all to see, mortality rates that high on a population where just slightly more than 50% of the birds are going to survive the year. So they're getting eaten by a lot of things, not just us.
Well, that's why, I guess that's why, focus on predators is actually important, very important, actually, when it comes to turkey population, isn't it?
It's certainly a tool in the toolbox. I mean, if you've got good habitat, you're going to have some turkeys, but managing predators is that's a tool that people need to think about.
So real quick, how has your turkey exploits gone?
Mine has gone pretty well so far. I always would like to be able to get out more than I do, but I've gotten out enough, and I've found some success. And like I said, really the best part of our season is traditionally from about right now until maybe say the second week of April. So if hunters have not had success up until now, don't worry, because the best part of the season is still yet to come. Gobbling activity usually peaks right around April 1st, almost no matter where you're at in the state. So we're getting to it, and hopefully we're going to finally get into a spring weather pattern that makes a little more sense. This has been like the craziest spring weather-wise.
It has been.
Yeah. So
it has been. As we do in the show, we've got fog in coastal Mississippi and thunderstorms rolling through. So it's that time of year. Hey, listen, it's been great to talk to you, Adam. You're terrific. Your passion for the wild turkey is very contagious. Thanks for all your hard work, my friend.
Thank you. Anytime.
Hey, when we come back here on SuperTalk Outdoors, we'll have Anthony Ballard. He's the nuisance species biologist for the Department of Wildlife, Fisheries, and Parks. We'll see you after this.